Now let me give you three indications of what's happened since we passed the Recovery Act. I told you 770,000 people about unemployed in January, lost their jobs. But the average for those 3 months, November, December, January, last 3 months of the previous administration, was 726,000 jobs lost per month. During the last 3 months, an average loss of 35,000. That's not success, as I say, but it is very good progress. Because that means about 690,000 people didn't lose their job. And we're keeping people on the job, and we're getting some jobs. But we're not going to have success until we grow over the line. Now, in November of last year, we did add 64,000 jobs. You need 100,000 jobs in America every month to stay even. What do I mean by that? People coming into the workforce, women who have had children who want to go back into the workforce, or individuals who have been sick and not been able to work that want to come back into the workforce. Young people have gotten out of school or out of college. They come into the workforce. You need 100,000 to simply stay even. During the last administration, we added an average over 8 years, 96 months, 19,000 jobs per month. Under the previous administration, Bill Clinton, we added 216,000 per month. Now, you can see, therefore, how distressed our economy became. If you're adding 216,000 in the 90s, that means you're adding 116,000 more jobs so people have options. And it also meant that businesses were growing and needed people to work. And they were good paying jobs. But when you only add 19,000, that means there are 80,000 people who are coming into the workforce can't find any work. That's why from December 07 to January 09, some 3.8 million people lost their jobs. That was the total. During the last year of the Clinton administration, we added 1.9 million. 1.9, 3.8, 5.7 million turnaround. So there was great distress. And we acted large, $832 billion. And we didn't have $832 billion, so we had to borrow it. Now, I will tell you, friends, there are two major objectives that we're going to have this year, that President Obama and the Congress. Building the economy, growing the economy, creating jobs, and returning to fiscal balance. We got a lot of young people in this room. Well, all of you are young people in this room. Absolutely. We got an amen up there front, Pastor. And with respect to those young people, I've got 3 daughters. I've got 2 granddaughters and 1 grandson and 1 great-granddaughter. And if we don't get our act together, I am going to leave them, and you are going to leave them deeply, deeply in debt. That is not only an intellectually bankrupt policy, it's an immoral policy. So what we have done is we did borrow money, but we got to get back to balance, so we're going to have to tighten our belt longer term. But in the short term, we got to make sure that our economy gets growing, because if it doesn't grow, we're not going to solve that fiscal problem. If we don't put people back to work and they're taking money as opposed to paying money in, we're not going to solve that problem. So those people who say, well, we can't help anymore because we're broke, they don't understand. If they don't help those people, we're going to be broker. It's like saying, well, you got that sore on your arm, don't worry about it, we're just not going to worry. And it gets worse. We had a tragic instance of that in this county. A young man named Damani Driver. He had a toothache. To fix that toothache would have cost us a maximum of $150, maybe less than $100. But his mom couldn't find a dentist, and probably his mom didn't know exactly where to look. I can't imagine that, if I know there are dentists in this county, that if his mom had gotten a hold of him and said, look, he's got a really bad toothache, and can you help him, they would have helped him. But his mom didn't know exactly how to go about it and didn't get there. That tooth abscessed, became infected. The infection went into his brain. He went into the emergency room, and a little short of 30 days later, that 12-year-old little boy, for want of a filling, getting that infection out of the tooth when it was a toothache, not an abscess, not an infection, died. And that was about $100, $150 max. $290,000. Much more valuable was that young man, of course. But when you just look, even if, Pastor, it wasn't the moral aspect of the humanity, $100 versus $290,000. Now, that's not hard for anybody to make that. We want to invest $100 if it saves us $290,000. So you don't even have to worry about the humanity. Just do the math. Keeping people well is cheaper than getting them well when they're sick. So in the American Recovery Investment Act, we invested a lot of money in growing jobs. And we've grown jobs. As I told you, one economist says about 2.4 million jobs. Now, unfortunately, much of it was not in growing new jobs, it was keeping jobs that existed. And there are a lot of teachers who were teaching last year, a lot of policemen and firemen who were on the job last year, and other people in the private sector and public sector who are working because of the investments in the Recovery Act. Maryland got over $4 billion. Over $1 billion, about $1 billion went into education, so that we didn't have to cut back all over this state in class size and teachers and services for our kids. About $1 billion, these are round figures, went into transportation, so we could continue to build roads. Now, building roads is nice, we all like roads, but what does building roads mean? You've got to have somebody to do it. You've got to have somebody to drive the trucks, you've got to have somebody to lay the cement, you've got to have somebody in the office making the payroll out for the employees that are working. All of those jobs were kept going and expanded. So when we got something in return, we got a better transportation program, which in turn enhances the growth of our economy. So that jobs bill, it's called the Recovery and Reinvestment Act, was not only short-term, but it was also long-term, because we invested a lot in growing green jobs, alternative energy jobs, healthcare jobs, health information technology, so we can get an online. Down in St. Mary's County, I was in St. Mary's Hospital about a week and a half ago and saw their computer records. They don't do paper records anymore at St. Mary's Hospital. It's all on computer. And the docs and the nurses have, you know when FedEx or UPS or delivers a package to you, and they've got that little handheld computer? That's how they can tell you where they track it. You know, you can call them up and find out where your package is. That's an amazing technology. But most places can't tell you where your healthcare records are. Tell you where your package is, but they can't tell you where the status of your health. You see this ad on TV? It's a wonderful ad where the guy is talking to the doctor and he says, you know, this is wrong with me, doc. And the doc asks him a question. He sort of looks puzzled. And then you see this big auditorium, and a doctor gets up and says, well, he had this, this, and this done. And then another doctor gets up and says, and then he had this, this, and that done. And so, you know, the guy didn't remember. But the point is, with this technology, without the auditorium and without all the docs and nurses and medical personnel sitting there, we can get that immediately. You go through St. Mary's Hospital, and I haven't been through Prince George's Hospital recently as to whether or not it's got that technology in there. Does anybody know that? I don't know. But in any event, when they do have it, it'll help medical personnel make us better people, healthier.